Good morning, beloveds. Um, I I called him and I called my boss this morning and I said I had hoped to have my voice back. Clearly, it is not back. Actually, it's better than it was when I called him. I think it's a matter of I gotta rehydrate in the morning. This was the first morning that I woke up that my nose wasn't stopped up, although it is now. So go figure. Not the way it was though. So I'm clearly getting better. But that is the particular weakness that I have now. Anytime I get anything respiratory, I immediately lose my voice. So I don't lose it. It just, sounds weird. All right. So it is April 17th. Our title is I Shall Succeed. And it is written like a poem, so I'm not sure. We'll see. It is written by Evelyn Whitell. Sorry, Whitell. And this is from Service and Smiles from 1934. And it's from Unity. All right. I shall succeed. Though everything looks dark and drear, I shall succeed. Though failure's voice speaks in my ear, I shall succeed. I do not fear misfortune's blow. I tower with strength above each foe. I stand erect because I know I shall succeed. Though others' doubts are built round me, I shall succeed. Though fortune's ship I cannot see, I shall succeed. Through mist and rain I left my eyes. I see the sunlight in the skies, and seeing it, my glad heart cries, I shall succeed. Night swoops on me with blackest wings, but I'll succeed. I see the stars and that darkness brings, and I'll succeed. No force on earth can make me cower, because each moment and each hour I still affirm with strength and power, I shall succeed. All right. I find it interesting that we got a poem today, and one of the reasons why I find that interesting is my tech partner at Creative Life is a poet. She's a very good poet, and they talked her into doing one of her poems at an interfaith Thanksgiving, and since then, the Unity of the Woodlands occasionally hires her to read poetry in the service. Poetry is part of that, is part of the playbook. It's part of the playbook because it's rhythmical. And, okay, y'all can judge me all you want, but one of my favorite, I don't even call it a guilty pleasure anymore because I don't feel guilty about watching it. I actually love to watch Ancient Aliens. If you've never watched Ancient Aliens, it's worth it. You don't have to buy the alien theories. They just take you to amazing places and show you amazing artwork and show you amazing structures. And then they throw wild theories at you that you're just like, what? But there was one that they were doing and they were talking about sound. And why I found it so interesting is because they were talking about how sound and rhythm affect the brain. It was so when I went through ministerial school, you took psychology courses, leadership classes, business classes. When you got out, they wanted you to have everything you needed to start your own center and run it. It didn't mean you had to be good at all of that. It's just you at least had the basic understanding so that you could hire good people. And that's that was in the leadership classes. It's like you can't take up every seat on the bus, but if you know what seats you have on your bus, then you can fill them with good people. All right, hang on. And in one of the psychology classes, they were talking about how the voice can be used to manage the mind. So it's one of those things, and I hear Danielle doing it, but she doesn't do it the same way I do. But it's because she doesn't know the theory behind what I do. when I would introduce whatever the topic is, and I would talk for a minute, and then I would stop and I would say, "Be here now." Okay. Well, when I would do that, that was that introduction into the meditative state. Well, each word should be slightly lower than the other. Be here now. Okay? Because that literally induces the mind into that meditative state, into that receptive state. And poetry can do the same thing. You know, it puts the mind into a more receptive state. So what she's saying is, in her poem, is it doesn't matter what's going on, because I know I shall succeed. And when you read the poem, I shall succeed is completely in caps. Completely in caps. So when you read the poem, it's meant to be emphasized, which again is meant to stimulate the brain in such a way. Music stimulates the brain in a certain way. Poetry stimulates the brain in a certain way. Reading, depending on what you're reading, stimulates the brain in a certain way. Listening to people talk stimulates the brain in a certain way. So poetry is actually a really powerful way to stimulate the brain. And what her goal is in stimulating the brain in this way, I'm trying to make sure I keep my voice here, is to remind you, no matter what is happening, you will succeed. Now, in Science of Mind, the reason why we believe that no matter what is going on, we will succeed is because we have a power flowing through us that doesn't matter. Because in one point she says, "I tower over my foes." Okay? And then she also reminds us, it's like, look, I know it's dark, but you can only see the stars when it's dark. So that's the power of poetry. That is the power of, so I commend poetry to you. And it's one of the tools that we use. It's one of the reasons why I do miss Dick Schmelzkopf. Because he was such an amazing poet, and he would write wonderful poetry for us. And that's why they did, during Black History Month, since Danielle is of African American descent, Jesse asked her, "Hey, would you do a poem for us each?" And she did original poetry and beautiful poetry, and it spoke from her heart. So poetry, and I don't know if this is still true, but about 10 years ago, it was true. Do you know who the #1 selling poet in the world was? Rumi. Okay? Do you know why that's ironic? Because most people are unaware that Rumi's poetry is a meditation on the Quran. So, and poetry, like Rumi does, and Hafiz does, and Khalil Gibran does, are meditations on sacred work. So that's one of those things, is go and read, poetry that is a meditation on sacred literature. Because there's beautiful, what's the, Footprints in the Sand? Footprints in the Sand is one of those beautiful poems. Do Not Stand at My Grave and Weep, one of those beautiful poems. Anything by Mary Oliver, beautiful poems. I'm trying to read, I don't know if Thich Nhat Hanh writes poetry, and Pema Chandran is another one. I think I've seen poetry from them, but they are poetry from a sacred point of view. And so sometimes especially if you're burned out from reading sacred literature, go read the poetry that is inspired by sacred literature and see, because it paints with a different brush. It paints with a different brush, and it's meant to touch different parts of the mind and the heart. So I commend to you sacred poetry. Actually, just poetry in general. I just enjoy poetry in general. So, Evelyn Whitell, I shall succeed. You know, this would be one that I would pull out if I was getting ready to start some kind of new work. And so that no matter, because I'm steadily losing my